I do realise that this is probably quite a different video to what I normally post, either shirt content or Premier League predictions, but this is something I'm still quite passionate about, and that is the football crests of football teams. Now, I am quite a big fan of sort of the design aspects of football, as I've seen with my love for football shirts. And if you've ever seen my custom shirt videos, I like to mess around and use alternate logos for some shirts. So yeah, that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to be looking at football crests, and more specifically the rebrands that a lot of football teams have been doing quite recently. I'm not really a fan of them, to be honest, and I just want to talk about it. So that's what this video is. So yeah, for the last few years, football clubs have been infected with the desire to rebrand their club and their identity. I just want to say, please stop. Now, this is normally done in the name of minimalism, and to be honest, I think it's a plague that has wormed its way into modern football. Now, minimalism itself isn't bad. It can be done very nicely, but I think the trend that's appeared in football rebranding and clubs as a whole with minimalism has not been executed well, in my opinion, for the most part anyway, because some teams have done it well, and I will touch on those, but a lot of teams have not. No club is safe. It's affected the giants like Inter and Juve, as well as minnows like Solihull Moors and San Marino. So we're just going to take a look at what's happened, talk about the things behind it, give my thoughts. So the main reason I'm making this video is because of FC Tokyo. Now, the J-League outfit decided they were going to unveil a new badge, and it was this. No. Now, to be fair, FC Tokyo didn't have a great badge already, but this is even more of a downgrade. And if you look at their past badges on, say, Football Kit Archive, they've not been great. So I guess they're sticking with form. The one they've chosen to go with in the new season is a bit more of a downgrade. It removes any character that the original badge had in the name of minimalism and modernization. In my opinion, it just could have been done so much better. Of course, it was paired with the classic mumbo jumbo that comes with any club dropping a rebrand. The stereotypical lines of representing the diversity of the city of Tokyo, which, yes, Tokyo is a very diverse city, but how do the lines represent that? I don't get it. I know there's like 11 lines for the 11 players on the pitch and whatnot, but it just seems like you've made the design and then you're justifying it afterwards, Because you had a nice badge already that FC Tokyo fans would have identified with and represented them, and now you're changing it for no particular reason. And it supposedly incorporates the angles of the pentagons and hexagons that make up the icosahedron of the soccer ball. Yeah, there might be a mistranslation of the Japanese on their website, but I don't really see it. It looks like you've just taken the shield form factor and then slapped some lines on it. Now, I'm not a designer. I don't think anyone needs me to tell them that, but this, compared to this, I know which one I'd rather have as a football badge. From my perspective anyway, it's just a lot of words to say that they've destroyed their club's identity. It's a logo with no character or soul, and I don't think it represents Tokyo either. There are a lot more aspects of Tokyo they could have drawn on for this badge, but instead they didn't, and they just went with some lines and some text. It's a big downgrade. And that was the main driving force behind me making this video, because it's a terrible redesign. And I know they're not going to change it because of what I say or anyone else is saying. It's a club's choice. But we've seen clubs walk back on rebrands before, so there's no reason why they couldn't. Now, I'm not an FC Tokyo fan. If I just bought any team in Japan, it'd probably be Gamba or Soccer. But it's still a bad design, man. What is going on with these clubs? Now, I think one of the biggest victims of this rebranding plague, shall we say, is Inter Milan. They went from this beautiful logo, a beautiful logo that has very little changes since it was introduced in 1908. Now, yes, it was changed for different logos throughout their past, but they've always seemed to return to the iconic IMFC logo. They finally returned to it in 1989 and carried it through to 2021. Yes, it did go through minor changes and the major changes that I mentioned, but the core elements remained the same, but that was until the I'm Inter campaign hit. Don't get me wrong, I thought the campaign was a good idea, helping a new generation identify with the club, but the new logo is leagues below the one it replaced. Now, it has grown on me slightly since its introduction, but that's only because of the 21-22 away shirt, which is fucking phenomenal. But their old logo, which has been used for well over 100 years at this point, was phenomenal, and I think more people would identify with that logo no matter their age than with the new logo. And obviously there are people who have only supported Inter when they had the new logo, and that's a bit different, but for the main bulk of their supporters, this is the logo that would be representative of Inter Milan. Like all those amazing moments they've had in the past, or up until, was it 2021, will be with that badge. You know, you've got those iconic shirts with that classic badge. That badge is Inter Milan more than this new badge is Inter Milan, but it doesn't look like that's changing anytime soon, and that is very unfortunate because they had a class badge. And then I just want to look at Juventus as well, as they are another victim of this rebranding. They had a decent but iconic badge, much like Inter, that had remained similar for many decades. Obviously there are a few changes throughout there, but largely it remains the same. Now it's not a brilliant badge, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but it's far better than what we got. And yes, in 2017, they got a new badge. Decent design idea, you know, shaped like the Italian Scudetto, but that's not exactly obvious from looking at it. You need someone to tell you that that is why the design is as it is for you to see that, which is not really great design if you ask me. The design was inspired by fast-growing global brands, and you can tell because any soul the designs had were gone. I think the main culprit of this is PSG, and I'm going to touch on them in a bit, but I think a lot of teams have seen what PSG have done, you know, their collaboration with Jordan, and thought, we can do that, we just need a new badge. And it's not as easy as that. They put down the zebra, or they put down the bull, and it's very unfortunate, and you deserved that point deduction you received, just for the terrible badge alone, to be honest. Not all football club rebrands have been bad. PSG, Man City and Brentford are a few which I feel have been done quite well. They've kept the identity of the club and brought those elements into a more modern age, which is an approach I think you should take from a rebrand, not just designing a whole new logo, because you don't need to. These clubs have shown you don't need to. You just need to take aspects of a badge you've had previously and just update it, and it'll be much better. Each of these badges took one from their past and just updated the elements, you know, altered a few bits, maybe changed the composition of the logo, but just updated elements, brought it into the modern age, and they look phenomenal because of it. Norwich are another team which rebranded well. They simply polished up the badge they were already using, updating it for the modern era, and it looks great. Now you can see the differences between the two when you put them side by side, but it still maintains all the original elements of that badge, and it just makes them look a bit better. And you can't really complain with that. The reason PSG's rebrand has been so successful is because they struck a deal with Jordan, which opens up a new market in the US, which is a huge market for fashion, for sports. You know, if it pops off in the US, it's going to be global. And that's what PSG managed. You know, they collaborated with Jordan. That's already a huge market unlocked. So you're going to start selling a lot more shirts. Then you've got Neymar. You had Neymar, you had Messi, and Mbappe. You know, some brilliant players. Neymar, probably one of the most noticeable footballers other than Messi and Ronaldo. So having Messi and Neymar on a team, it's already a cheat code as well. I don't think the likes of Juventus or Inter Milan would have signed those two players. That's part of the reason why their rebrand was so successful. You know, the badge is nice. It's taken a previous PSG badge and updated that for the modern age, which is a solid way to create a nice new badge. But also the players they signed helped boost that image and helped boost their global presence. And I don't think the other football clubs kind of recognise that, because they're just doing the badge rebrand without those collaborations in place with the likes of Jordan, you know. So they're kind of failing at the first hurdle, so to speak. It's not so much the rebrand, it's the collaborations you're doing with brands that really boost that global image, which most clubs are trying to capture with this new badge. Now, I feel like I get to say this from quite the lucky position, as I am a Nottingham Forest supporter. We've had this same iconic badge for over 50 years, and honestly, I wouldn't change it for the world. I love this badge, it is iconic, and it has stood the test of time as well. It has been through some minor changes throughout the time, you know, different elements have been added, like to commemorate our European Cup wins, adding the stars to the badge, those sort of things, but the main element has remained the same. And 50 years on, it still works wonderfully. That's enough positivity for this video. Let's look at some of those awful, just downright terrible redesigns. And the first team I want to touch on is a team I've mentioned already, and that is Gambaro Soccer. They had this wonderful badge that suspiciously looks a lot like the badge of 11th tier West Elliot and Willoughby FC here in England. Now, I'm not sure who did the badge first, but anyway, that badge got changed to one that looks a lot like the Juve redesign. The shield is more visible on this redesign, but it's still awful. You didn't need to change your badge, and it looks out of place in the J-League until obviously FC Tokyo dropped their terrible redesign. Not a fan. Bring back Gamble Boy, you know, or whatever his name was. He was cool. And then we move on to Fiorentina. Now this, I think, is a more iconic one. It happened last year, I believe, but I think a lot of people up in arms in this one, myself included. And I just want to ask why. they took this iconic design, you know, it's a shape you don't really see football badges in, and that's what makes it unique. I'm all for a funky shaped football badge, anything that breaks the norm of like a shield or like a circle, I'm all for. But no, they just squashed it and removed some important elements. It honestly looks like a fake badge. Now yes, they kept the fleur-de-lis, but they turned it into this. What the fuck is that? But yeah, fake badge. FC Nantes, you know, not nonce, but they committed a crime nonetheless by removing all identifiable and iconic elements from their original crest and replaced them with the letter N. Just terrible. It's terrible and unrecognisable in comparison. They kept one of the little cross things at the bottom there, but where's the boat? Where are all the iconic and recognisable elements on the badge you replaced in this one? It just looks awful. You're not an esports team, you're a football club. And then we want to Stade de Reims, or Reims, I don't know, I'm not good at French. But Will Still may have led Reims to a 19-game unbeaten run in all competitions, costing the club 22,000 each time, but they also rebranded into this. Granted, the original badge they were replacing wasn't great, but they've been stripped of any identity they may have had, and it was done by the same person that did Juventus, I believe, or Nantes. One of the two did the same rebrand, so you've got blood on your hands, mate or design firm, whichever you are, but you've removed any identifiable elements from this badge and just stripped it down to the letters once again. The next one is particularly egregious, and I circle Bruges. What on earth is this? What the fuck is that? Even like what, a year, 2 years on, this still looks dreadful. The original badge was not great, I'll give them that. It was just the letter C with a little hexagon thing and a crown, but this is even worse. The main justification for a redesign is to appeal to a wider demographic, but this really begs the question of who this appeals to, apart from the designers that designed it. I don't think anyone likes this. This is especially bad as a football badge. Like, I could understand it as like a secondary branding logo maybe, but not as a badge on a football shirt, guys. What the fuck? And then we move on to FC Metz, and they went from this beauty of a badge, wonderful badge, love this, to this. It actually doesn't look that bad. But what happened to the lizard, guys? Like the lizard, the dragon, what happened to him? Why didn't you implement him in the redesign, man? He's such a cool element of your badge. You could have wrapped him around the cross or something, you know? You didn't have to just leave him out in the cold. You could have brought him back. It's not the worst redesign we've seen, but not the best either, because it does take an iconic element from the Mets badge, but it just takes that one element and fucks off the rest. So yeah, not the biggest fan of that, but it's decent. It's a decent effort. San Marino, yes, the minnows of international football. This one's kind of an interesting one because their original badge was just the coat of arms for San Marino, and fair enough, that could have done with a change. As much as I do like coat of arms, not really suitable for a football team. Though saying that, most football teams' badges were originally their council's coat of arms or their city's coat of arms, so I do understand having coat of arms as football badges, but they can be modernised as well and brought into the modern era without looking terrible, and San Marino could have done that, but instead they went with something that looks straight out of Minecraft. And honestly, I'm saying it, this is probably the reason you haven't won a competitive match, guys, because you did this terrible rebrand. I know you weren't good before the rebrand, but after the rebrand, this is why. Finally, I just want to take a look at Venezia as well. Now, I'm a fan of Venezia ever since I went to Venice and picked up some of their shirts. They're very nice shirts. But I think Venezia are most known for their stylish football shirts. But their new crest is a lot more disappointing. It does a lot right, you know, it incorporates the line and the club's colours, but the previous design was just so much better. It was unique and felt more connected to Venice, with the line of St. Mark much more prevalent than it is on this badge. Now, I know you can see the line's face in the V, but it doesn't really feel connected to Venice in any way. It does include the colours of Venezia, but the old badge did that much better as well, incorporating the black much more. I just don't feel this new badge represents Venezia as well as the old badges did, you know. That might just be me, but I'm really not a fan. And then I also want to take a look at the MLS, as these guys are notorious for their rebranding. They love it. You can't stop an MLS team from rebranding. They just have to do it for some reason. So I'm just going to take a look at a few of these teams that have rebranded, touch on their logos, and see the horrors that the Americas have produced. I'm going to start with Houston Dynamo. This rebrand just makes you feel like a baseball team. There's not really much more to say. It's okay. It's not brilliant by any means. Your old logo was much better in my opinion. Could do with another rebrand, guys. And then move on to Columbus Crew. Now these ones have had a few massive rebrands recently. Well, not recently, but in their history. The one they have now is decent. It's not the best it's been, but it's okay. But they went from this almost Bayern Munich ex Borussia Dortmund badge, you know, black yellow Bayern Munich, which I was a fan of, to be fair. But they went from that, or they went to that from this logo, which looks hard as fuck, I won't lie, but it's not really a football club badge. So I think the black yellow Bayern one was beautiful for Columbus Crew. And then they just went to the letter C. That is devolution at its finest. What are you playing at? And then we move on to Chicago Fire, and they had this beautiful logo. You know, they utilized the Maltese cross as a reference to firefighters and the fire element of their name. They decided in their infinite wisdom to change it to this. What the hell is this? And after some backlash, it was rightly changed to this. Still looks bad, nowhere near as good as the original logo, but there's a sort of a Maltese cross in there. The original badge was far superior, and this modern one just lacks any character really. And then move on to the poster child for MLS redesigns, and that is Montreal Impact, or CF Montreal as they're known now. They went from this wonderful unique badge, phenomenal stuff. I know it's a shield, but they've got design elements outside of the shield which changes its silhouette. Lovely stuff. And they turned it into this.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
They then changed it again to this, which is a marked improvement. It looks a lot nicer than this abomination, but still not as good as the original badge they had. Although it does take some wonderful elements from that and nicely incorporates them into a new logo, which I can appreciate. It's an improvement, but still not great. And finally, the last MLS team I want to look at is Seattle Sounders. They're the latest team to do a rebrand. I have mixed feelings about it, I can't lie. It's not terrible, but it does remove a lot of character from their previous logo, which I thought was wonderful, to be honest. It strips it down to the colours of the club and the Space Needle. Now, the Space Needle, iconic for Seattle. Of course, you got to have that on the badge, and I'm glad they kept that. But I don't like the execution. They just put in a bog standard shield. The original one had a very unique shape, which I thought worked in its favour. Not awful, but not great. I mean, you went from this wonderful badge to this terrible badge, so what can I say, man? It's not great. But yeah, that is my little rant on football badges, I guess. Teams have done it well, but a lot of teams have really missed the mark. Video is going to be called What It's Really For. I just wanted to rant on football badges and rebrands because I think they're a scourge of modern football. But I'd be remiss not to talk about the would-be badge redesigns, mostly in England, as obviously I'm an English football fan. That's where I have the most expertise. Everton, Leeds and Watford. 3 teams that should be competing in the Championship, and only 2 of those teams are. Everton decided to change their badge in 2013. Much to the chagrin of their fans. After a year though, with constant backlash from the fans, a newer, more improved badge was introduced, and the fans have received that one far more better, and it kept important elements like the laurels and the Latin motto. I believe Everton fans were allowed to vote for this second rebrand, and they chose this badge, and rightly so. It is the best of the 3 options. I mean, that third option is dreadful. What is that? I'm glad no one picked that, my god. In 2018, Leeds United were preparing to introduce a new badge as well. It was this monstrosity. I'm sure no one can forget this, but what the fuck is it? Now, this was apparently designed upon fan consultation. I think whoever was consulted on this should take a long hard look at themselves in the mirror, because in what world is this a better badge than the one you had already? Why did you consult and say this is the best design? Because it's clearly awful. The club rightly backtracked on the decision after the backlash, and that terrible badge was never seen again. And that's for the best, to be honest, because it's a monstrosity. And then there was Watford. Now, Watford gave designers all around the world a chance to redesign the badge ahead of the 2021 season. In the end, the club did not opt to change their badge, even after 4,000 designs were submitted, but this was after their current badge went against the top voted fan design and was ultimately victorious. And I think they made the right choice. You know, they are called the Hornets, and they do have a red heart on their badge, so that can be a bit confusing, but if you look into the history of the Watford Football Club, you realise why that's happened. And I do think they should have a hornet on their badge, and which is what many fans opted for, but none of the designs were better than the one they currently have. And I think that was the correct choice. I think all 3 of these campaigns represents what football clubs should do looking forward. Consult the fans. It really seems like a no-brainer, but football clubs are nothing without the fans, and they really should be consulted on these types of changes in the future. If you've had a badge you've had for like hundreds of years and you suddenly change that to a more modern, less characteristic badge, the brand recognition is going to suffer. More people have had time to associate with that design with the club. I can't be the only one that thinks like this, right? I know you've got these designs being paid bucket loads of cash to redesign something that's not broken at all, but why? You should always consult the fans after getting this redesign created. You could ask them what's their opinions on the new badge, like Bradford City did with their recent rebrand they were going to do. They asked the fans to vote on the designs they liked, incorporated them into the new redesign, and I think Bradford City have done it wonderfully. Now obviously not every fan is going to be happy with the designs they make, and that is the result of democracy, that's always going to happen.
This is Democracy Manifest.
But consulting the fans should always come before actually pushing through a rebrand. Like you'd have thought more football teams would have realised, hey, with all these backlashes that redesigns have had, maybe we should consult the fans first. Although saying that, the Leeds fans that were allegedly consulted for that redesign should not be near a football club design process ever again, because what the hell. But yeah, that was my video on football badges from more of a aesthetic aspect more than a business aspect, but that is why I love football badges and I love football shirts, for the iconography, you know, the graphic design. That's what I'm more into than the whole business aspect of it. I do understand there's a business aspect behind redesigns, but I don't think it works in the favour that they're saying it should. Anyway, I've been O2GT. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and if any club decides to redesign their badge, tell them it's shit, but also make sure that they get fan consultation first. Yeah, have a great day. Peace.